broadcast to us now. We're so glad that you're able to make it, at least via this electronic means. And I wanted to do a little bit of an introduction of the senator. As you know, he is the senator from South Carolina. He went to the University of South Carolina for both undergraduate and law school. And I am proud to say that I was one of his instructors at JSOC. And a couple of things about the senator that you may not know. He is probably one of the foremost conservatives in the United States Senate. And he has, yes, Senator, there's clapping on that. And when he was going through JSOC, I would have never dreamed he'd be a United States Senator, because he gave us feedback when he thought it was appropriate. And one of the things that people don't know about him is that when he was on active duty, people think of him as conservative, government-oriented. He was one of the most effective defense counsel I saw in 35 years. He almost took down the entire urinalysis program that we had in the military, personally. People used to tell me, I used to think I was a pretty sharp prosecutor, and they say, hey, you got to watch out for this Lindsey Graham guy. He's really tough. And we stayed in touch off and on over the years. He's in the reserves, and he's a real reservist. I used to have to go down and he did PT testing. He really ticked me off, because I used to go to the gym all the time. I'd struggle through the PT test, and I had to watch his PT test. And the darn guy gets a higher score than I did. There's something not right in the world, Senator, when that happens. In addition, and more seriously, during the 2006 period when all the senior JAGs had to testify before Congress, and we were very concerned about the proposal for military commissions. And one of the things the JAGs were very concerned about was whether or not the accused was going to be able to see all the classified material, or all the material that was going to be properly witnesses. And let me tell you, there was a lot of stress in that. And the guy who was in our corner was Lindsey Graham. He was our supporter, because he demanded that there be fairness in the process. And I will tell one story about you, Senator. When we went to Iraq in 2009, Senator Graham was on active duty as a colonel. He's a colonel in the Air Force Reserve, a JAG officer. And I think we went to Camp Bucca, I think it was. And of course, people were swirling, Senator, what do you want to do? Senator, what do you want to do? And he said, well, you better ask the general. And just to be a general, I said, I don't want to do that. And so, and I'll tell you, I can't say enough about Senator Lindsey Graham, how strong a supporter he has been of our men and women in the armed forces. And he's seen it up close and personal as a reservist. He's actually spent more time in Iraq and Afghanistan than I have. And he really has been a strong supporter, not just of the active duty military, but also the families. And as you know, Senator Joy's here, and she appreciates the strong support that you gave to any family issues associated with members of the armed forces. Without further ado, and I do want to tell you, Senator, that Major General Jeff Rockwell is in the audience. I'm not sure if he's your reporting official, but he's close to your reporting official, so you may want to keep that in mind. Senator, looking forward to your remarks.
Well, thank you very much. I am trying not to shut down the government. So in 5 hours, I'll let you know how that goes. But I apologize, I can't be there. We had votes today that prevented me from getting down. And this is the only way I'll ever get to law school, is right here. So, and when you have my SAT and LSAT the only place you could go was into politics. Bad news for you, I'm one of the smarter ones up there. Anyway, our colleagues in the House are wrestling with the idea of trying to fund DHS as I speak, and whether to shut down the Department of Homeland Security to make sure until President Obama repeals his executive order. From the Republican point of view, I don't think this is going to work, guys. There's got to be a better way. Let the boards decide this. But 33 years ago, I guess this month, I met Charlie Dunlap. He was an instructor at the JAG school. I just got out of the University of South Carolina. I was in ROTC. My parents died when I was in college. The Air Force was kind enough to give me an educational degree and allowed me to stay in South Carolina to help raise my sister, who was 13 at the time. So I went to the University of South Carolina Law School, won everything I did in college, much less law school. And went into the wanted to be a pilot, and that didn't work out. Probably saved the Air Force a lot of airplanes and miles of life. For meeting Charlie wrote on, and he made it fun. And I can tell you that experience at the JAG school was one of the best experiences I had as a boarder. And 33 years later, we're still talking about my favorite subject, which is the law. I love politics. It's a fun thing. It's a sport in a way. It's a loud business. But the law to me is the anchor tenant democracy, the rule of law. You can vote. Everybody allows you to vote, so now I've got 99% of the vote. I haven't quite got there yet. So, not democracy. The law, in my view, Charlie, is about losing. The problem in the Mideast today is it's a winner-take-all world. If your tribe is on the short end of the stick, so you have to roll the gun. There is not much in it for losers without rule of law. And what we're trying to establish that part of the world is the concept that you don't have to reach your own militia to get your way, that there's a place to go to resolve disputes rather than the battlefield. That's the hardest idea of all, that it won't be about whether you're a Sunni or a Shia, rich or poor. It's about the facts of your case. When we take that for granted here at home, we're going to make a mistake. Maybe not so just here tonight, thank you for serving. I worry that in Washington, we're politicizing the judiciary, that this constant attack on judicial nominees, ideological in nature, is going to drive people out of wanting to be federal judges. The politics of the moment are beginning to invade every aspect of our legal system, from the Attorney General nominee to the Supreme Court case. The topic tonight is a good one. How do you defend a nation in an endless war where there's no capital to conquer, there's no air force to shoot down, there's no navy to sink, there's no definable end, but very much a war? What I believe is that there's got to be a hybrid system that comes out of this conflict, and we'll be fighting radical Islam in some form generationally. Many times it will be through the force of arms. A lot of times it will be building up capacity to allow people who are willing to say no to this radical ideology the chance to say no. Building school clinics and providing a better life makes us safer over here. For a politician, that's hard to convince people that we should spend money on roads and bridges, in schools and hospitals over there when we have shortages here. But here's what I say. If you can educate a young girl, you can give people hope. That's the worst nightmare for radical Islam, to educate the public. You can read for themselves what the Quran says, have a level of understanding and hope that comes from a better life. So this is a war in every sense of the word, But the way you win this war, not through killing terrorists, but building up those in the region who would live in peace with us if they could. There's a fight for the whole Islam going on. At the same time, there's a restructuring of how the government of the Middle East. There's a demand for social justice by young people, terrorists that fill that vacuum. So for us tonight, we need to concentrate on the difference between criminal law and the law of war. And I've tried to tell my colleagues in Washington that there's a fundamentally different approach in the law of war than our criminal law. Domestic criminal law is about resolving disputes and holding an individual accountable and a group of individuals for a specific event. The law of war is about protecting the nation within the values that we all share, having rules that basically allow us to be better than our enemies, but to win the war. The primary purpose in the war is to gather intelligence, not just put somebody in jail. So when we capture an enemy combatant, an unlawful enemy combatant, even an American citizen who is siding with ISIL or some other terrorist organization, my primary goal as a military warrior is to hold that person under the law of war so we can gather intelligence, find out what the enemy's up to. Secondary concern is the prosecution. Under domestic criminal law, you can't hold someone for an indefinite period of time. The question is, that's not the purpose of the criminal law. The purpose of criminal law is to have trial and bring about justice. When we find an enemy prisoner in our midst, the first thing I want to do is make sure that we interrogate them within our values, within the law, find out about what the enemy's up to, any impending attacks. Charlie done a lot of other JAGs back in 2006 and 2007 were center stage in a great debate in the country. We know what Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and ISIL will do to those who fall under their influence. We know they will cut your head off. We know they do it without due process. The question for us is that our guy, I have absolutely no desire to mimic the enemy. The way we win this war is to embrace the values that stood the test of time. When you capture a prisoner, it becomes about you, not about your enemy. So during this contentious hearing, writing the Detainee Treatment Act to outlaw waterboarding and other interrogation techniques, it was the military community who spoke with the most credibility, the loudest voice, that yes, we can fight a vicious no boundaries within our values, adhering to the Geneva Convention, and to all the rules that we have written for ourselves in an ethical fighting force. It was probably my most proud moment to be associated with the military legal community because they found themselves in a very tough spot. Politics of the moment were very hot. America was hurt. America wanted to fight back and strike back hard. And we went overboard. It's not about the mistakes you made as much as it is how you correct your mistakes. Through the process of writing the Detainee Treatment Act, authored by Senator King, was the military legal community and some intelligence officials that had the current wisdom and standing to show us a better way. So that product, I think, will stand the test of time. This war will go on for generations. But at the end of the day, the values that we fight for are our best defense. And in my view, the only way to win the war. Because there's plenty of people in the world that will cut your head off. What we're trying to do, there's a better way. And I will take any questions you have, and I wish we did not have to go back to Iraq and Syria. But it seems to me that we're going to have to go back in some capacity and recapture ground that was fled for to begin with. And when we clear the great and destroy ISIL, we'll have to hold that territory. And the only thing I can tell you, The Americans are a very long, hard struggle where we'll have to stay over there, some for a very long time. We're going to be helping people build up their life, create capacity that is so young to a vicious enemy. It is in our national security interest to do so. Finally, in many ways, dropping a bomb on somebody is a skill you can acquire. It being building up other people and creating a rule of law out of chaos. The economy that's fair, social justice, that is a hard, long struggle. It's been so for us, it will be so for them, that there is no substitute for life. And over time, we will win. Radical Islam will lose. And it will be the people who rise to the occasion, but they need our help. The best thing we can offer them is our military, help them fight and win this fight, and helping them rebuild their homes and their neighborhoods, but more than anything else, our values. The strongest value we've developed over the last 200 plus years has been the idea of the rule of law. That it's not about politics, it's not about your race, it's not about your background. It's about what evil they should have done. That the richest person to be judged based on the past. Our passion. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Senator. And I'm just going to say again, in 2006, you know how alone the military orders were. What you did meant a lot at that time. We have would you be willing to entertain a few questions from some of our students?
Since they're going to pay a lot of taxes for the rest of their lives, this is least happening. And no social security results. Good luck to all of them.
Danny, say who you are and...
Hi, Senator Grant. My name is Danny Bolier. I'm a 3L here at Duke Law School. And thank you so much for talking to us tonight. It really is great to hear from you. And my question is about leadership. Generally, you've had a great career both as a politician and in the military. And I was wondering if you would share with us one of your favorite anecdotes about leadership from your career.
That's a really good question. From a lawyer point of view, being a defense attorney is a great challenge. There are two sides to every story. The defense side is far more challenging to tell, but I enjoy that challenge. Leadership really is about making sure that your client's interest is at yours when you're a lawyer. Even though you're representing the most unpopular person in town, you're not going to let how people feel about you get in the way of defending that person. And it's always leadership in my business. Leadership is about telling your friends that you think they're wrong. The easiest thing I can do in politics is beat on Democrats. There's a big market for that, by the way. The hardest thing is to tell people in my party, I think we're all faced here, and to reach across the aisle and take an emotional problem like immigration, in the war within your values, and find consensus. So to me, when I was in the Air Force doing these urinalysis cases, I found myself as a young captain. The first guy to walk into my office when I was the Area Defense Counsel was a 19-year-old technical sergeant, 19 years of service, 1 year away from retirement. He came up positive on a urinalysis test. He came in to see me with his wife. I was 15 years old. She started to cry. I heard her telling her, at least I'm free. But over time, because of the support of my superiors in the defense chain of command, I was able to change things by being an advocate. And I was told more than on one occasion, you need to watch out for your career, but never by the defense community. And at the end of the day, the best thing I did back then was to just focus on my client. The best thing I can do now as a Republican is to focus on building a stronger party to make sure America is ahead of parties. This government shut is an example of people being upset about an executive action that I think is clearly out of bounds. But leadership is making sure that because you're mad at somebody, you think they have wronged you, that you don't lose sight of the real purpose of government. And that is to resolve disputes doing the least amount of damage as possible. So shutting down the Department of Homeland Security, given the threats we face as a nation, is not the right answer to a wrong that's been done. And leadership is being willing to tell people that when they're mad as hell.
Jennifer? I'm the general. I get to pick the questioners.
Hello, Senator Graham. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Jennifer Kendricks. I'm a third-year law student here at Duke. And I was hoping you could give us your thoughts tonight about the increasing trend of using the military to deliver humanitarian aid to countries such as we did in Haiti and recently in West Africa with the Ebola crisis. Do you see this as a positive development, or do you think it could possibly compromise war readiness and national security? Thank you.
That's a great question. You know, the Guard and Reserve, all of us have day jobs. And what makes the Guard and Reserve so effective is that when you're deployed in a combat environment or go to West Africa, you take your day job with you, and sometimes that can do as much good as your military job. But the military is at its best when it's doing is that helps defend the country. And the capacity we built in the military on the medical side, the discipline we have, the can-do attitude, the ability to get people to work together is unmatched anywhere I've ever been. The thing I like most about being in the military is that you don't focus on differences in religion and politics and background, you focus on the mission. So yes, I believe that our military, when they deploy to Africa, turn the corner on the Ebola crisis, is very much part of their job, and quite frankly makes us safer because people remember those soldiers. After Japan and Germany collapsed, after they were bombed into submission, a whole generation of Japanese and German children saw the GF as a positive force. The best ambassador in all of the world to me is the American soldier. And sometimes they make mistakes, and that hurts us as a nation. But I've been to Afghanistan more times than I can count, and I promise you that the thousands of acts of kindness, buying soccer balls with your own money, fixing a broken pipeline when you don't have to, just being a good, decent person, wearing the American uniform, can do more to secure this country over time than any lethal force. But there's another group that doesn't get mentioned at all. I'm the chairman of the Foreign Operations Subcommittee, in charge of the State Department, USAID, and all of the foreign operations, foreign aid that we have as a nation. It's 1% of the budget. And I want to shout out to the State Department, to the USAID workers, to the NGOs who are in Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan and Liberia, and you just name it, doing great work at personal risk. When it comes to winning a war on terror, radical Islam, we have to fight this ideology with a better way. And the ultimate weapon is capacity building. The good news for us is that most fathers do not want to turn their daughters over to the ISIL way of life. It is in our interest to build up people in the region so they can save others and to be part of the process of turning this around on the ground is going to be a military-civilian partnership, and the sustaining power of preventing the rise of radical Islam is not going to be 100,000 troops on the ground. It's going to be a multinational force of NGOs, of aid State Department, professional diplomats with some military help. So yes, the military did a great thing in Africa. They should have gone, but at the end of the day, there are other people out there not wearing the uniform that are, to me, just as essential to winning the war on terror as anybody else, including the lawyers from the Department of Justice, who mentor the judges and the prosecutors, the defense attorneys of Iraq and Afghanistan.
Brianna? And then you're next. Brianna's not quite tall enough to get the microphone.
Hi, my name is Brianna Strange. I'm with 3L. I was wondering what your view is on the role of women in the military.
What got me in the military?
Women in the military.
Oh, women in the military?
Yes.
Is to make work about it. Like women everywhere else. The role of women in the military is just indispensable. There are more women in prominent roles in the military at any time in modern history. Literally, we cannot fight this war. The all-volunteer force has a significant female component. The sexual assault problems we have in the military, you have on campuses everywhere, you got throughout society. I am working with members of the Senate and the House and the military to make sure that the commander is going to be responsible for what happens in their unit. I've been a military lawyer for 33 years, and the only way you fix a problem in the military is to make sure that the commanders are held accountable for the outcome. I never want to hear the following. Sir, ma'am, was raped last night in the barracks, and the commanders say, this is no longer my problem, send it over to the lawyers. So from my point of view, the modern all-volunteer force represents America in a terrific way. The skill sets coming down the road, the job opportunities are going to be open more to women than any time in history. And I just want to talk about the sexual assault problem because an overwhelming number of women who have served in the military, particularly in combat zones, have told us they have either been assaulted or inappropriately dealt with. And that has to stop. And the only way that's going to stop is to pull the chain of command liable and put people in jail when they get out of bounds. We cannot fight this war. We cannot have the military we want if we treat our female service members poorly. And we're going to try our best to put an end to this. Thank you for the question.
Senator, if you can handle just a couple more. Yes, sir.
Yes, a couple more.
Senator, thank you for being here today and for your comments. I wonder if you could talk for a moment about the recent renewed emphasis on counterinsurgency in the U.S. Army and on counterinsurgency doctrine. And as you've already alluded, the war with radical Islam is not going anywhere anytime soon, but there are still needs to be prepared for countering the movements of great powers or for sort of the traditional uses of the U.S. military. So how do we find that appropriate balance, and how do we maintain that appropriate balance between great power conflict and also counterinsurgency strategies?
That is a great question. The goal of counterinsurgency is to separate the enemy from the population, to isolate the enemy militarily, politically, and to build up the indigenous population so that when they take the fight to the enemy. But counterinsurgency is about being outside the wire, being in the police stations, going on patrol, building up capacity, and basically creating a justice system where the cannot exploit the inequities. The biggest rise in the Taliban after we went in 2003 is when the Karzai government became corrupt to the core, the justice system was failing at every turn, and the Taliban exploited the lack of justice. They replaced it with a very harsh but non-corrupt legal system. The one thing I've learned from Afghanistan and Iraq is that the enemy exploits weaknesses in the governing nation systems. And the biggest weakness in Afghanistan today is the idea that the justice system is for the few, not the many, that it's corrupt, and you can't count on it. And counterinsurgency will never work until you get that piece of the puzzle fixed. The police in Afghanistan today have a higher approval rate than any time since 2003 when we went into Afghanistan, because we spent an enormous amount of time bringing civilian police officers to do the training, to try to create a system of internal accountability, created a uniform code of military justice for the Afghan military, so that when a military person abused a civilian, the system could respond, and that's one way of defeating the enemy. But the skill set of a modern soldier, when you clear a village to hold and build, you literally have to teach basic governance, getting up a running water system, help them with their sewer system, organizing a local county or a city council. The modern soldier has so many jobs to do to clear, hold, and build. And the one thing I would say about this force over the last 13 years, it is the most multi-talented group of people I've ever met in my life who can do almost anything. They're just incredibly talented, and counterinsurgency is about making sure that enemy cannot exploit weaknesses in the economy and governance. That takes a certain level of numbers on our side, a certain commitment, and when you pull out too soon, as we did on my view, it all fell apart.
Senator, one of the things I like to do at these dinners is call on a student that hasn't asked a question to give them the opportunity to be. Amy, come up here. This gives her the opportunity to have that experience of thinking on her feet.
Okay.
Amy?
There's probably violence that you need to admit.
This is verging on torture.
Tell them who you are.
Thank you so much for being here. I don't know, I'm, as a student, very much interested in national security. I just want to know what led you towards, down the road towards JAG in particular, and you know, your line of work. You know, what was your inspiration for public service?
Excellent.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess, do you remember where you were at on 9/11? Does everybody remember where you were at on 9/11? Some of you were very young, I would say. Charlie died, not so much. Here's what I would say. Now, I was a politician. I dreamed of being a politician. Never thought this would happen to me. But after 9/11, it all changed for me. I remember the night of the attack, walking across the street from my house to the steps of the house steps. And House and Senate members had congregated, and somebody right behind me started singing "God Bless America." There wasn't a car on the streets, there wasn't a plane in the sky. It was the most eerie feeling in the world. I went to the Pentagon a couple of days later, and I made a promise to myself. As long as I'm in the government, I have been as a member of the House or the Senate, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure we defend this country. I'm going to make sure that we never do that again if possible. It was a life-changing event for me. I know that the people out there are trying every day to get here. The challenge in my generation of political leaders is to make sure that law never requires a weapon of mass destruction, because we used to. The only reason 3,000 people died on 9/11 and not 3 million is they couldn't get the weapon to 3 million up, and they're trying every day. So, you know, nobody's asking me about it. I would like to find a prison within the United States to house combatants. I want to do it within the law of war and the Supreme Court rulings on point. I want to have a transparent legal system. I want to allow people due process. I want to make sure that every enemy combatant held has a periodic review of their case. I want to make sure that nobody is held by the military indefinitely in federal court blessing the finding that they are in fact an enemy combatant under the statutory definitions. But if they have to die in jail because they're too dangerous, within that due process, so be it. Some people on the left, I think, have a hard time struggling with that concept. Some people on the right have a hard time struggling with the idea you give these guys warriors, and they have here. I'm okay with the idea you're held as an enemy combatant. You should be treated humanely within the Geneva Conventions, the rights of our country. You should provide legal counsel, and federal courts should review military decisions. To my friends on the right, these systems make us stronger, not weaker. To my friends on the left, don't criminalize this war, because we're not fighting. We're fighting people. We're religious. We're commanded by God. Kill or convert laws. Now I know that's hard to understand. But what drives my thinking, what has created the passion I have today, is that I've seen it like Charlie has up close and personal. I did my reserve duty Camp Luca, General Nunlop. Al-Baghdadi was there. There were thousands of people in that prison camp, most of whom could be reconciled, some of whom are hopelessly lost this hateful ideology. So I'd like to close with this thought. America is a generational struggle against an enemy that knows no boundaries. And the only way we can be safe is to have a presence over there so they don't come here. And to have a military intelligence community adequately resourced deal with it. Because you can't deter these people, you have to stop them. Let this stop here
I'm not quite sure what that's about, but
That's a vote. That's a vote.
I think
Call for the
it's
vote.
over.
okay. Yeah, you do have that other job.
One last thought, I'll let you go. I have never been more worried about another attack than I am right now. I've never seen so many terrorist organizations with so much safe haven, with so much capability, with so many riches, weapons to hit us as I do today. We've got to stop that. We've got to stay over there so they don't come here. But at the end of the day, the hope of mankind and the hope of winning this war lies not in force of arms alone. It lies in the power of values. Now again, the rule of law is missing in the Mideast. And the day that it catches hold, people feel comfortable enough to lay their guns down, to let their leaders, to resolve their disputes within a legal system, is the day that we turn the corner and and finally defeat this radical ideology. It will take a long time to get there, but it's worth it. Yet, Charlie, thank you for your service to our country, to your students. Thank you for listening to me, hearing about the topic. Your generation, all you have known since you've been fairly small kids, is a constant state of conflict, constant tension, watching television every night, seeing one threat after another. Your peers, people your age, have been fighting this war in Afghanistan and Iraq. And the one thing I take away from the last 13 years is America has created one hell of a group of young people. And we should all be proud. Thank you very much.
Senator, thank you so much.